You are listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. I'm Kyle Bryant.
And I'm Sean Baumsart. Together, we're navigating life with disability.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This is episode 40. That's 40. Holy cow, we're over the hill. That's nuts.
Yes, we are.
All
right.
We're really excited to have a really awesome guest on today. So much of the time, disability hits us out of nowhere, and it challenges the vision that we have for our future, and it challenges our self-worth. And so today we have a man who was faced with these challenges, and he writes about them in his new book called Little Big Steps. Arash, welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
Thank you, guys. It's a pleasure to be here and join you.
Awesome. Yeah. So, before we jump in, I wanted to let everyone know that, so your book is out, and at the end of the episode, we're going to give details about how to get a free download of the audiobook. Is that correct?
That's correct. Absolutely.
All right. Sweet. So we have that to look forward to, but first of all, we want to hear your story, and you can, start as far back as you want. Just take a few minutes to introduce our listeners to who you are.
I'm 36 years old. I currently live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I almost 6 years ago, so back in 2012, in July of 2012, I suffered a spinal cord injury. I fell from a 30-foot balcony and pretty much landed on my neck onto concrete. Broke a couple of vertebrae in my neck in a bunch of pieces, and basically had my life turned upside down unexpectedly, as that happens in that situation. And it was a enormous change. Up until that point, I was 30 years old at the time. I had finished graduate school a year before that. I was living in San Francisco, following my career of choice, and just living a good life. I was always very outdoorsy and very active. I was playing soccer and biking to work every day, biking all over the city, going on runs. And on the weekends, I would go hiking, go camping, backpacking, whatever it was. So I've always, physical activity throughout my entire life has been a big part of me and my personality, my identity. And obviously, all of that changed in July of 2012 when I suffered the spinal cord injury. And so I entered into a world of very different, challenges, as probably many of your listeners might identify with or understand. And, it's been quite a ride ever since then.
You gave Sean and I access to the book, and we listened to it over the past few days, and it's really incredible. You have an incredible story, and I think you have a lot of views in there that, I don't know, I didn't really know about, because I'm not as familiar with spinal cord injury as obviously as you are, or some of my other friends are that actually deal with that. And so a lot of your book is about the frustration you feel with the medical establishment and their view on how you should view your outlook after a spinal cord injury. Can you kind of explain that a little bit and for our listeners who haven't read the book yet?
Absolutely. I'm happy you brought that up, because while the book is very much a memoir of my story, of those first couple of years following my injury, your question is right at the heart of one of the main reasons I wrote the book, and one of the things that I'm very passionate about now, and what I'm trying to do with my work now, and everything. So Yes, I'd be happy to talk about that. I can only speak to my experience, obviously, in spinal cord injury, but a lot of what I talk about in the book is obviously what I've experienced, and then also what I've noticed and seen from people around me. So some of the statements I'm making are very much, within that context. And the big struggle that I had and continue to have is that I believe fundamentally that our medical system, as advanced as it is, as amazing the technologies that we are pursuing are, we're doing so much amazing, incredible work in general within our medical industry. But the experience that I had proved to me that the approach to dealing with spinal cord injury, to me, was very, very antiquated. They were using knowledge and approaches and methodologies that seem to have not been updated for the last, 10, 20, 30, 40 years even. So, for example, my doctor in the hospital, just weeks after injury, the perspectives and things he was telling me, and I share some of that in the book and some of those conversations with him specifically, they were, I later understood as I did more research and read and talked to people that they were basically the things that the medical textbooks were saying about spinal cord injury probably when he was getting when he was in medical school 40 years ago. And to me, that was just a huge, huge disappointment, because I thought of cancer or HIV or AIDS or, whatever, all these other, better known conditions. And I thought, how crazy would it be if we were treating cancer the same way now as we were in 1980 or something? And so that tension and that kind of gap between my experience, what I was feeling through my body, the ambition and drive that I had to improve my condition versus what I was being told repeatedly over and over and over, and to manage my expectations, to not expect for any kind of significant return, to accept and adapt to my life as it is in this moment as quickly as possible, and then and only then would I have the best chance to be happy. And that's kind of the common theme, to really summarize it, that I experienced a lot, especially in those first few months following my injury, and it's much of what I share in the book as well. So it's really a matter of acknowledging and understanding that throughout these different stages, especially in those first few months after my injury, whether it's talking to a doctor or a physical therapist or, different people within the medical establishment, I was encountering this common, approach that was telling me to live a certain way and mentally accept and move through life a certain way. And that was just at great tension with my own personal objective and what I was feeling within my heart and within my body to do. So.
Yeah. So I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you felt like, and you still do, and it's amazing, to have what you're striving for and what you've accomplished, and we'll get into that. But your ultimate goal, as you say in the book, was to walk again. And everyone's telling you, no, you've got to adapt, like you just said. So, like, at one point, you had occupational therapist, I think, that was trying to get you to think about modifying your home in a bunch of different ways. And she told you that you should check out some cutting boards that you could use so you could still cook. And Sean and I wanted to know if you have found a good cutting board yet.
I actually have found a good cutting board, and it had nothing to do with it had nothing to do with the the advice of the occupational therapist. But yeah, I have a great cutting board, and it's light, but it's sturdy, and I use it all the time now. But at that time that you're referring to, that was the last thing on my mind.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I was trying to figure out how to live in your current body. Like, there's what I love about your book is, we're kind of fast forwarding quite a bit, but you refuse to give in to this idea that, yeah, crap, this happened and I'm stuck. There's nothing I can do about it. And that's what the medical world was telling you to do. Accept where you're at and make the most of it. Instead, you were saying, okay, I'm going to accept where I'm at and I'm going to change it. And in the process, make the most of it. So that particular story, it resonated and it was funny because that particular PT or OT, whatever she was trying to get you to just accept the fact that you're stuck in a chair the rest of your life and you're not going to be able to stand up or do anything in the kitchen without a cutting board on your lap.
Exactly, and you brought it up really well. It's she was saying all of this, and to be honest, like, the stuff she was working on with me had nothing to do with walking or the rest of my body. And she was an occupational therapist, and she was, this is at the stage in my injury. I'd already spent a few months in the hospital. I was out. I was back, I say, home in air quotes, because I didn't have a home at the time. My apartment was up 3 flights of stairs. I had moved out of that, or people had moved me out. My parents' house was not accessible, so my parents had to move into a wheelchair-accessible apartment. And so that's part of the story. I bring all that up because, I'm back home in this new home that I've never been to, and she's coming to my home, and great. I'm happy I'm happy they're sending someone to come help me. But you said it really well a moment ago. It's about, like, it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive that I'm accepting a certain level of my body where it's at right now, but I also want to improve it and think that I can. And her message was just looking at me as I was. And I was always, and maybe I'm delusional. Maybe I'm, that's a problem. I don't know. That could be. I'm a little bit crazy that way, but I never saw myself as like, okay, this is where my hands are at now, and this is where my hands are going to be 5 years from now. It just didn't make any sense. Like, why would the body not want to get stronger? So she was there, basically not listening to me and saying, well, let's figure out how to get you to make a sandwich. And I bring that story up in the book over and over again because she did. She kept saying, well, okay, how are we going to get you to make a sandwich in the kitchen? And I said, lady, I don't even know this. Yeah, I don't even really like sandwiches a whole lot, first of all, but whatever. Enter, meal of choice here, but like, come on, like, I can barely even hold a plate, because my hands are still weak. I've injured my cervical vertebra. They control all the nerves to my upper body, and I'm actually extremely fortunate. I have to say, and I say this in the book, that I had any level of ability or, in my hands and my arms, because that was kind of an anomaly on its own. So with that in mind, she just wouldn't listen to me. And I said, I just want to get better. You guys were doing great stuff for me in the hospital. The OTs in the hospital were actually helping quite a bit. I give them a lot of credit. They were doing great exercises. They were dunking my hands in freezing water and ice, and then doing electronical stim on it, and it was helping. My hands had gone from pretty much having almost no function to having some, and I was just begging this woman to give me a little bit more, like, just work with me, build on this with me. But she was just working within this paradigm that I think really didn't allow her, A, to help me, and B, to really listen to me and understand even what my needs were.
I love that you say it that way, and maybe we can kind of jump into that topic for a minute. Maybe it's not so much that she was an insensitive person or unwilling to do something for you, but like you said, maybe she was operating in a paradigm where she didn't have a choice. And it sounds like in the profession of the medical world, maybe somebody else was telling her what she could and couldn't do for the sake of money or for the sake of expense. Is it worth talking about that for a minute at this point? Like, what do you feel like you were up against? What was it more so that she was, for lack of a better term, like just unwilling and unflexible, or maybe she just didn't have a choice?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I do think it's more within the paradigm. She wasn't a bad person personally. I did encounter a couple people who I really didn't connect with well throughout this whole process, but she wasn't like that. She wasn't like not trying to do her job. She was there. She was, doing her, I guess, her best, although when you only have 1 hour a week, which is literally what I had, spending that time searching for things on Amazon for me is just not a very good use of time. So she left a little bit to be desired in terms of efficiency. Like, okay, like you have a computer, you're a young person, you probably know how to use the internet. So why don't you look for some cutting boards on Amazon while the other 700 hours of the week I'm not here, whatever it is, and not do it right now. But I do think, to get back to your question, it's a matter of the paradigm that she was working under. And I was made aware of that. I saw glimpses of how it all worked based on the conversations that I had with different PTs and OTs and doctors, that in their world, from what I understood, everything had to be justified, and that means the money too. So for them to pay for an OT to come to my house, or for them to give me 10 sessions of PT, whether it's in my house or at the hospital, it had to be justified towards a specific functional goal, was the language they always said. And I think with my injury, typically, maybe there wasn't a lot of improvement. Maybe that was what they operated under, was that what you had was what you were going to have. And the frustration was okay, let me be that 1 in 50 or 1 in 100, whatever it is. Let me be that one crazy guy who thinks that I can do it. And even if I can't, and even if I'm completely out of my mind, at least just support me a little bit. Give me a chance. Because I don't want to hear the evidence of you have a X% chance of doing this and an X% chance of doing that. The bottom line was my hands had improved. My hands had improved dramatically in, 5 weeks of inpatient rehab, and I could now feed myself. I could hold a fork. I could hold my iPad. I could read a book. I could do certain things. And the paradigm in which she was working was, well, if I can't find a functional goal, which I don't know how she couldn't, because to me, improving your hands, think about it, if you improve your hand, everything improves. And that's the point I made to her. Why can't we strengthen my hands? And then, I can write, I can type, I can make that sandwich, I can, take care of my hygiene. Everything will be better if we work towards improving my hands. But I think in her paradigm, it had to be, that wasn't enough. It had to be, I visited Arash today and we worked on, cooking in the kitchen or whatever. I don't know, whatever, however it was that she was, does that make sense?
And it occurs to me that, it's written as a rule somewhere in some insurance, booklet or guidelines that it's got to relate to a functional goal, right?
Exactly.
So that makes everybody stuck in that paradigm because it's written somewhere.
Exactly. They would say that to me point blank. I mean, I would go, once I kind of figured out this whole thing out, and this is around the same time and even after, and I would go in for PT at the hospital. I would go for I was at home at the time, but I would go into the hospital to do an hour a week of PT, which isn't even close to enough. But, I started hearing that language, and then I knew. And the PTs would say it too. They're like, well, we can't do this because we have to have a specific functional goal you're working towards. And I was just kind of a pain in the butt to them. And I just say, well, why isn't walking a functional goal? Why isn't improving my core a functional goal? Like, why isn't, getting function in my lower body? That to me seems perfectly functional. Like, why can't we work towards those goals? But for them, it had to be, categorized a certain way and classified a certain way so that they could put it in the paperwork and put it in their system, and so that the insurance company, which, let's face it, at the heart of the whole discussion, it's that we have an insurance and healthcare industry that, puts, people's well-being is ultimately secondary towards cost and efficiency and profits and those things. So if you are trying to allow someone to get healthy or improve their condition, then there are a lot of different things you can try. Some of it might be experimental, some of it might be more well-proven, but within our system, and specifically, I guess, again, I'll just refer to myself, within my experience, that just wasn't the case. Every penny had to be justified as to why they should spend any time or money or effort helping this guy who, in their eyes, probably isn't going to improve much more than where he is at right now.
So you are not a guy that gives up easily, or ever, maybe, I guess. So can you talk about sort of the shift that you had when you met someone in your recovery that really started helping and pushing you towards your goal?
Yeah, it was such a dramatic breath of fresh air for me when I met Alejandra, and she, I met her about almost a year and a half after my injury. So, until then, I'd spent all that time doing everything I could to my best efforts, doing things at home, finding some rehab gyms and whatnot, around my home that were all out of pocket, usually very expensive, different treatment. Like you said, it was so dramatic to meet somebody who actually was in line with my way of thinking. And so I was told of a person in Maui in Hawaii, Alejandra, that is doing really great work, and it's based on Pilates, but it's her own system. And I said, sure, let's give it a try. And it was one of those things, like the moment I met her, the moment we started talking and working, I could tell like we were on the same page. And a lot of it obviously had to do with just her attitude and her approach. But a lot of it was also in her language. Her language wasn't, written with the same terminology and the same words and the same, approaches that I had become really used to. She wasn't telling me that, a year after my injury, I'm not going to have any more return or any improvements after that point. She wasn't telling me that, to tame my expectations or adapt and, you're not going to get better. She was, I think even in our first conversation, she was referring to how much I would improve a couple of years from that point, which was kind of wonderful for me to hear, because it was, like I said, such a breath of fresh air, but it was so different from everything that I'd heard from everyone within the medical establishment. Because the common thing, and maybe we didn't talk about this yet, but the common thing they say, and even to this day, they say with spinal cord injury is, most of your improvement comes in the first 6 months to a year. After 1 year, maybe 2, what you have after that point is what you have for the rest of your life. You're not likely to have much improvement after 1 year or at the most 2 years. And here I am talking to this person who's very casually talking about, 3 years from now, you might be able to work on this. And, she's just, her language, her attitude, her everything was so, so different. And my gosh, I felt like I was like Popeye who like ate a can of spinach or something. Like I just felt like I got a rush of energy and motivation. And I'm like, oh yeah, let's do this. I like her. Like, this is awesome. Like, so, I will do whatever you tell me now because I trust you. And really, that's ultimately really what it was. At the end of the day, I didn't have full trust in those people that I'd encountered before that. And with her, I was able to establish trust and say, okay, she tells me to do something. I believe her more than I believe the last person I talked to, and I'll do it. So it was dramatic. It was a very dramatic change.
I hate to simplify it to this, but do you think one of the major things was that, I mean, you were paying her out of pocket, and so that took the whole, like, insurance establishment thing and people doing stuff because it was written and someone else told them to. It took that out of the question, out of the equation. And so was that, I mean, do you think that was a big part of why she's able to think on her own?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yes, unfortunately, I do think that's the case. I think our medical establishment and everything functions under so much fear of lawsuits and malpractice and being sued and telling someone something that they are going to hold them accountable to. And I think that's unfortunately part of it. She was free from that. And so she didn't have to worry about, me saying, well, you told me this, or you told me I'd be able to do that. And she never did. And to her credit, she never said, well, Arash, like, here's what you're going to be able to do, and here's what your limits are. And she just said, hey, you want to work hard? I'll help you work hard. Let's see where you go. Yeah. And that's all I wanted from the insurance industry too. So, yeah, I think that's a massive shortcoming of our system again, that people are just so scared because maybe the PT or the OT is told or trained to say that if you give anyone the slightest glimmer of hope post spinal cord injury or post, whatever it is, your condition, then you are then liable if that person later comes and says, well, you told me I'd be able to do this, or even if they didn't say that. But
oh my gosh.
I think it's crazy. Just such a mess. And I think that's why I've said this numerous times. I say it in the book, I say it in all of the speaking and the events and everything that I do. I never wanted anyone to tell me something false. I never wanted smoke to be blown up my rear end. I just wanted people to give me a chance and to say three important words that I just wish were uttered more often from the doctors and the PTs, which is just, I don't know. Just be okay with ambiguity. Be okay with saying, I don't know if you're going to improve. I don't know if you won't. I don't know if this treatment will help you. I don't know if it will help you a lot or a little. But if you want to try it, sure, let's go for it. But those three words were so lacking, and I feel like, again, another part of our medical establishment is always wanting to have an answer. It's like, it's okay, don't have an answer. Like, you don't need to give me a percentage. You don't need to give me a scientific, well, the evidence shows this, or it's like, screw it for a second. Just dream with me, I know I'm saying things that are very, I'm sure if someone, I don't know, in that world heard that, they'd think, well, maybe, good job, buddy. Like, you're a dreamer, but you're not realistic or something. But I really do think the other side of it is you're crushing people's hope.
Yep.
You're crushing people's ability to improve their lives and to have a chance. And ultimately, those people, I would say, they're even more responsible for the lack of improvement that maybe some people experience, because ultimately the person who's injured, the person who's going through this traumatic situation, has to live with it the rest of their lives. And if they weren't given a chance to realize their potential, I just think that's unjust. I really do. I think it's not fair, and I think it's unjust, and I think it has to change.
Yeah, perspective is probably more than half the battle. If you don't think you'll improve, then why work on improving? But if there's a little bit of hope, and a little bit of dreaming and a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, all the more reason to keep working hard. And like you said, if somebody would just come alongside and say, "Hey, I don't know, but I believe we can make a difference. Let's see what happens."
There's always this battle for us with the FA, I feel like, between accepting the reality of the situation right now and also working towards a cure for the future, because it is possible. There's no doubt in my mind. But there's always that battle going on. And so, and I could totally see that with you. And before you were saying that they're not mutually exclusive. Those two things can live together, acceptance and hope for the future. So I don't know. I guess, can you talk about how you balance those things in your head? Even, yeah.
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, that's a point where I really had to work on, and it took me a while to be able to find some balance with those. I had a hard time, accepting any part of acceptance, and still think that I could continue to work at that. I guess my balance, to use your term, was off. And I think what I found, and it took some time, and it took quite a bit of time for me to see acceptance as a fluid. So I can accept what is there with me today, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm satisfied. It doesn't necessarily mean that I see it being this way tomorrow or next week or a year from now. And then I can also work towards improving it. And I think that so much of the conversation often is accept how it is right now and accept that it probably won't improve or something. And so, yeah, I'm the first one to admit I struggled a lot with that balance. And then I realized, actually, this can be a strength, because if I don't accept where I'm at a certain point, then I'm also, not appreciating everything that I've done. I'm not appreciating everything that I've been able to improve. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, again, it's obviously can be a very large and deep conversation. But for me, it was certainly something that took some time to balance and find that right balance. And now, I mean, sure, I'm not delusional. Or I guess earlier I said I might be in some ways, but I'm not. I'm very aware of my capabilities on a day-to-day basis, but I by no means accept that is the way it's going to be tomorrow, and by no means do I think that I can't improve that. And so I think there's a lot of power to this way of thinking as well.
Yeah, so maybe the distinction is acceptance for today, so you can move forward and be positive about the future, versus acceptance that this is the way it's going to be forever.
Yes.
Yeah,
So, Arash, if we shift gears just a little bit, we've talked a lot about, obviously, a bit of your story and your experience in the hospital and with home care. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing today. You said earlier that some of your mission is to help affect positively what goes on in our world and how other people deal with spinal cord injury or other disabilities. So tell us a little bit about your organization, or the whole, what gets you out of bed today? What are you working toward?
Absolutely. So it's a few different fronts. What gets me out of bed continues to be a desire and commitment and faith that I can improve my condition. So that is always a constant, back to the conversation we were just having. So that's one. But, beyond myself, I've been doing some speaking and motivational speaking. I love to share my story with people. I'm not at all discriminating which audiences I speak to at all. So I've had the opportunity to speak to a variety of different audiences and talk to a lot of different types of people about my story. And and again, most people on an everyday level, let's say, they're not necessarily interested, or it's not relevant to them, the intricacies of disability or life post-injury or whatever that is. So the message that I share, let's say with a company or a certain party that's inviting me to speak, it's a little bit different. It's more about the motivation. It's more about the mental drive and everything that I like to try to capture and work with. But honestly, I would love to make dramatic changes within this system that I've been talking about. So these days, I try to do as much as I can with anyone who has an opportunity to impact that system. So I've spoken to medical students who were, in their second year of medical school, while they were studying the spine and neurological system and everything. I was able to have a really great conversation with medical students. I recently, just after the publishing of my book, talked to a big room full of PT students at UCSF. So these are the next generation of PTs, and that was incredible. And I continue to seek those opportunities more than any. And then on another level, it's also the nonprofit that I co-founded with 3 other people. It's called No Limits Collaborative. We founded it about 2.5 years ago, and we are aiming to help people with spinal cord injuries and other neurological conditions, so stroke, cerebral palsy, whatever it is, anything that we think we can help with. We're aiming to help people within that community to gain access to a better quality of life by the means of exercise, different support and resources, getting people out there to participate in athletic events. So we have a kind of a large umbrella of ways in which we support people, but our mission is pretty simple. It's just get some of these people out there and do things that they think they might not be able to do. If you've never done an adaptive bike, then why not give it a try? Why not sign up for a triathlon that we are involved with and get out there and race on an adaptive bike? If you want to swim and get in the water with me, I'm personally very passionate about swimming, then let's do that. So we have a few different ways that we do that, but our mission is pretty simple. So I'd say that's the general sense of what I'm trying to work on, and I'm always open to new audiences, to new people. And so, yeah, if anyone has any ideas or wants to talk to me about any of that, I'm always there for the conversation, and I'd love to continue to keep it all going and to continue to share my story and hopefully impact and change this paradigm and change the system in a positive way.
Awesome. So since you mentioned cycling, I want to invite you to Ride Attacks in NorCal, because you're in the Bay Area, I believe. And so June 2nd, we have multiple route lengths and a lot of people on hand cycles and trikes that come out and raise money for FA research. So we'd love to have you
Awesome.
there. That was my shameless plug there.
Yeah, no, I had one too.
Arash, as we wrap up here, I want to make sure people know how to find your book if they want to check it out on their own.
Yeah, my book is called Little Big Steps. My name is Arash Bayatmakou. It's a really long, complicated last name, but I'm in all the searches. It's in print. It's an ebook, Kindle, audiobook as well. So however you get your books, it shouldn't be too hard to find me. Again, the title is Little Big Steps. Usually if you look for that or just look for my name, it should pop up pretty easily. I don't have a very common name. So, yeah, it's out there under any format. I wish I could say it was in bookstores everywhere as well, but that's a different challenge. So it shouldn't be too hard to find. And if anybody has trouble finding it, I'm happy to send them a copy or direct them to a link to download the ebook. You can read it on your phone, read it on your Kindle, whatever device you have. It's available.
Nice.
You said it's not in all bookstores, but there is one, and you're getting ready to go and do an event, I assume, right? In May.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well done. Yeah, I'll be in New York in May, specifically May 6th. There's a bookstore in New York City called Blue Stockings, and I'm very excited about that. They are a store who's all about supporting authors and books that are usually have some kind of mission, so either social justice or an activism kind of message, and they try to support those authors. So I'm very grateful for them to have invited me to share my story at their store. They will have copies of the book. So if anyone is in the New York area, May 6th, Sunday, 7 p.m., I'll be at Blue Stockings. And beyond that, I'm, again, happy to connect with anyone as they would like and continue to share the story and hear of other stories as well.
Sweet. Love that. And then one last thing for our listeners. We spoke to you before the show, and you have 3 free download codes for the audiobook that you are offering to our listeners, and we thank you for that so much. It's a really cool benefit that we can offer to our listeners. So the first 3 people that email the dudes at twodisableddudes.com, and basically all you have to say is, hey, I'm emailing because I want a free book from Arash. And so that's really awesome, and we look forward to your emails.
Yeah, I'm super excited to give it away and get the story out. So thank you guys for enabling that as well.
Yeah, man, good stuff. All right, so as we go here, people can, if all else fails, go to our website and go to the page for this episode, and you can find a link to arashrecovery.com. That's your website, right, Arash?
That's correct.
All right, so either go there or go to our website at twodisableddudes.com, and you can find that link. And Arash, thanks so much for this awesome conversation and for spending time with us today.
Guys, I have to thank you. I really appreciate having me on and talking with me today. And I'm so grateful for what you guys are doing, you dudes are doing, for the larger disabled community. And you probably don't need to hear it from me, but continue to make your voices heard and do your great show. And I'm honored to be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. Find us online at twodisableddudes.com. And please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts.
We'd like to hear from you. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Special thanks to our audio producer, Jake Tompkins, who also composed the music.
Until next time, keep living with urgency.